Well, good morning on a Monday morning. Hope you've got great things planned for the week ahead. But let's talk a minute. Here's some food for thought for you as you go into this week, as you look at it. There are three factors, three key ingredients that prevent so many people from building a team of rock stars. Number one is the issue of simply recruiting the right people with the right culture for your team. That's number one. Number two is the factor of where people leave you. Retaining people is also a key factor. But there's a third factor in this now, and it has been referred to as quiet quitting. That's right, quitting. One of my clients sent me a video with Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame, the guy they call Mr. Wonderful, and I listened to it, and it was all about quiet quitting and what you're looking for in business. So, in this research that I did on this phenomenon of quiet quitting, and to let you know what quiet quitting is, that is a person that is actually quitting what they're doing. They're no longer working effectively, but they're still lined up every single week for that paycheck. On payday, hey, they're in line to get it. But every time somebody leaves, so often as I talk to the client, we find out, hey, those people quit months ago. Their performance actually dropped, but we just weren't tracking and measuring that performance. So, what's in people's minds when they start quiet quitting? Well, number one, they make this thing up in their mind that they're just not going to overwork themselves any longer, just not going to do it. They feel like they're working too hard. They also say it's a survival tactic. It goes along with that previous one. They were simply felt they were working too hard. Another said it's a self care tactic. I got to cut back to take care of myself. And lastly, they say that the boundaries of the company sometimes are not spelled out completely enough and they're hard to navigate those boundaries. So, what do you do to prevent quiet quitting? Well, here's a couple things. Number one, you got a high performing team member, you got to celebrate that person's accomplishments. Number two, when you have the high performers, they need to be rewarded. And not only do they need to be rewarded, everyone else knows that high performers are being rewarded in your company. You got to reward them. Lastly, you got to track and measure just how effective they are. How effective are they? What are they producing? What's the end results of the efforts that they're putting in? Are they meeting your expectations? This goes back to a classic advice I give every client. You got to inspect for what you expect because one of the factors is often management is simply not inspecting for what they expect. And that's a key role of a manager. So you got to implement the systems to inspect. And lastly, what have you got to do? You got to build your reserve team of players. I've talked about this on previous videos. You don't see a football team trotting on the field without a backup quarterback. It reminds me of the story. Back in the 60s, the Baltimore Colts were going to the Super Bowl, and their star quarterback was one of the greats of all time, Johnny Unitas. And Johnny Unitas got hurt. He couldn't play. So they had to go to the backup quarterback. His name was Earl Morrall. And what did Earl do? Earl led them to the victory. That's right, led them to the victory. So this is what you've got to do also. You've got to build that reserve team up. Is it going to have a budget concern? You better believe it. You got to set up a budget and set up your pricing for covering this. You've also got to have your systems and your processes in place where every detail, every task, you've got a description of what's to do. You got to have complete job descriptions also. People need to know. Remember, you got to set the boundaries. It's all a part of management in the year 2022. You got to find the people, recruit them, Number two, you got to retain the people. But lastly, you got to have your eyes open, inspecting for what you expect, and make sure that your high performance team members are actually performing at the high performance level that you're looking at in this world. Appreciate you joining me for a couple minutes today, and I hope you have a great week out there and that you live some of your dreams and don't encounter chaos in the week